M1 MacBook Pro and 16-inch, I mean 150 hours later and I am impressed. But this is definitely a bit of an investment and not for everyone. You see, for me, this has been able to not only replace my blade, but also my entire custom build to an extent. People of the internet, I'm simply here to review this laptop based on my experience from hardware to performance. Today we're going to take a look at whether or not this can suit your entire workflow. Okay, so my life right now consists of working in different spaces, so the custom PC is not always the best solution for me. And this is why my Blade 15 was responsible for bringing work everywhere I went, whether it was code for Canva, my editing projects on Premiere, or even the ability to simply browse the net. I now more than ever need a powerful laptop to go places, which is why I decided to give the M1 16-inch base model a try. Plus, we all know that if you add the Apple stickers, it gives you 5 extra cores. Apple this year has decided to put their ego aside and have gone back to 2015. We finally no longer get the sleek slim design with a couple of USB-C ports and a chassis that feels that it could break anytime. Instead, this year they focused on functionality and practicalness to overall give the pro people the tool they need for work. So, they were able to fit a bigger battery in the sticker's 16.8mm chassis, new ports like the SDXC card slot, an HDMI connection, and one of the most awaited features like MagSafe, which by the way, did save this laptop once. It just all depends on the way the cable is pulled. But look, having used this laptop 24/7 for a week now, I enjoy it. As I am typing this, I can finally say that this keyboard is not so different from last year's model. The travel is practically the same, the feel of the keys as well, but the overall look and functionality aren't. This Magic Keyboard is set in a double anodized Blackwell, and yes, after a long typing session, I see why Apple did this. It nicely highlights the backlit glyphs on the keys, so when you are peeking at them while typing, you can quickly see the letters on the keyboard. A bit of a nice strange thing. Towards the top of this, we finally no longer get a touch bar. I've always rather Apple allocate this budget somewhere else, and this year they've finally done so. I always hated the extra tabs needed to do things like adjusting the volume and brightness, and truthfully, some apps were just poorly optimized to use this feature. So the last few days for me in terms of keyboard functionality have been simple. The hardware keys are great, and many people agree that the simple things in life are often the best. Different from the 13-inch like I said in the latest MacBook video, having this new fingerprint touch ID key is so much better. Funny enough, on the 13-inch I found myself missing it sometimes just because it was so small, so this here's just big and has been practical for me. Trackpad, I think they took it to another level. Although it's a slight change, I am really liking it. Now, I don't remember which company deals with Apple's haptic feedback, but I'm glad they made this a tad different. The trackpad off the get-go did not feel the same when using Force Touch, and it overall sounds distinct. Super happy they kept this size, and I love how Apple has space awareness. While we are on the subject of space awareness, look at how much space these speakers take. Personally, I really noticed the difference, and the bass is a lot stronger in my opinion. Apple does claim that this has 6 speaker sound system with 2 tweeters and 4 force cancelling buffers. So yes, everywhere I've been, this does deliver a clear sound stage. As for spatial audio, when I was watching movies on my couch, I tried multiple times to activate it. I'm not quite sure if it's supposed to work like it does on the phones, but I never truly got to try it. Hinges, I said it in my 14-inch video, they felt different, but you know what? They actually don't. The chassis on the display is what feels different because it's thicker, rounder, and a lot more sturdier, which means I've experienced very little to no wobble at all when typing. So the display. Essentially the most important feature about this laptop. This here is the Apple XDR display, which peaks at 1600 nits when consuming HDR content, and it is noticeable. ProMotion has been feeling so smooth when consuming timeline-like content, and the fun thing is that it dynamically adjusts depending on what you are consuming. So watching a movie, for example, will output 24 frames per second, but playing a game such as Fortnite will output 120 frames per second and it'll look nice. One thing I was concerned about is that because this is a mini LED display, I was afraid of the blooming like some people were claiming on the iPad. And honestly, it is something you'll experience if you are looking straight at the computer. And even worse, I hate to break it to you guys, but at an angle, it truly does bloom intensively. I sadly discovered this at night before going to bed. As for the notch, love it or hate it guys, it'll never get on the way. The mouse goes right under, the taskbar never truly gets affected by it, and because of this 16:10 aspect ratio, when consuming content, it disappears. I will trade thick bezels for a notch and small bezels any day, mainly because with these 3.5mm bezels, it immerses you into the screen. Just look at this monster. Oh, and for those that find it annoying on some laptops, the auto brightness on this is on point, and I think it's mainly due to the notch. You see, by Apple taking over a good portion of the screen, they were able to fit a better image sensor and most importantly, a 1080p resolution. It has great low light performance, outputs sharp images, and has a studio-like microphone. So here's what it would look in a fairly dark room, and here's what it would look like with the lights on, and I think my skin tones look pretty decent. Although I just found myself wishing it had center stage when I was on FaceTime with my partner. So when I needed to join him at the office, the fact that this now feels bulkier makes me feel a lot more secure when throwing it in a bag. And no, it isn't that much heavier to carry compared to the Intel 16-inch, but when going away, the MacBook isn't the only thing I bring. Aside from my MX Keys Mini and my MX Anywhere 3, I always bring a water bottle with me. My water bottle of choice here is from Lark, mainly because it is a self-cleaning bottle providing water purification. At Jan's office, I usually leave these bottles around with water, and the next day, well, you can only imagine how nasty it gets. And because I hate buying plastic bottles, I usually just hold my thirst. But now that I have a couple of Lark bottles, I can save over $500 a year compared to bottled water and no investment in filters needed. I have access to clean drinking water at all times thanks to its built-in water purification that eradicates up to 99.99% of bacteria. It keeps my water cold for 24 hours, but if you are someone that prefers hot drinks like tea, it will keep it warm in 12. It's really cool because every 2 hours, it uses UVC light for 60 seconds to bask the water and inner surface of the bottle. Although if you are outdoors, it can take up to 3 minutes. A single charge lasts for a month, so you don't need to worry about charging it all the time. Also, big props to Lark for having such a clean, minimal, and high quality packaging. So with a bottle like this, I don't need to throw my water away multiple times a day, and I can focus on work while pushing this 16-inch MacBook Pro with great performance. I ordered a ProTech toolkit from iFixit because I wanted to get inside this MacBook to show you guys what's inside. Within, this laptop does have a beefy heatsink along a thick heat pipe connected to a couple of fans. Also, we have the speakers on the side, the Force Touch trackpad which seems to be replaceable, the flash memory only taking up to 50% of the sockets, and the battery dispersed in these small blocks. Towards the middle, in my case, we have the M1 Pro. And overall, M1 is awesome because the CPU and GPU have the same pool of memory, so there's no need to copy data from one chipset memory to the other, which is why things are super fast. So this time with the M1 Pro, Apple has scaled this up and doubled the width of memory interface with faster DR at 200GB per second of memory bandwidth, which explains why you can have up to 32GB of RAM on this particular Pro chipset. And since it is an ARM-based chip, it specializes in energy efficiency. In terms of battery life, it isn't as good as what they claim, but it's still really good, and it takes about an hour and a half to charge from 0 to 100%. Editing this very video on this computer and some Lightroom assets for an hour lowered my battery life from 100% to about 79%. Scripting more videos, browsing the web for new Canva designs, and consuming content for another hour lowered the battery life to 63%. Learning iOS development by running Xcode and trying to build a small Node.js server for about another hour dropped the battery life by about 18%. And if I was gaming on Minecraft for another hour, we did drop by about 22%. Now, if I was ever running out of juice, I got to use the 140 watt fast charger along its braided MagSafe connector, which by the way, it's not so MagSafe all the time. It works here and there, but just note that depending on the way the cable is being pulled, it can drag your computer. Regardless, if you are using a USB-C to USB-C cable, you do top out at 94 watts, so it will take longer to charge. Now, this isn't a computer you buy for gaming. In fact, it's the only reason as to why you might not want to go from a Blade 15 to this. Look, the GPU is very capable, it runs Fortnite at max settings surprisingly well with a bit of lag here and there, but it delivers a very pleasant gaming experience at 120 frames per second. Just make sure to check out my latest video if you want to know more about it. Plus, a game that I personally played the past few days on this was Minecraft, and I have zero to no complaints, although the GPU doesn't support fabulous graphics. And I do use it along with Discord to hang out with the boys, but from time to time, everything does lag a bit. However, with this base model, things do get funky when using parallels, and trying to play games such as Cyberpunk is impossible. On top of that, for some reason Windows 11 was acting up on me, it wouldn't open properly and I experienced lots of cursor jumps. But look, if you are a developer and you need to run Linux, you can always create a VM using Parallels, which is something I did since I wanted to connect to a DigitalOcean server with a VM. So because Parallels uses Apple's hypervisor framework, the OS being virtualized through the software natively uses the CPU. The animations work very well, things are super snappy in Ubuntu, and I even went ahead and ran Geekbench on both OSs to show how far apart they are from each other. On top of that, running Xcode on this machine is a dream. It compiles multiple devices without a problem, and code editors seem to be taking advantage of that 120Hz ProMotion feature. Regardless, I'll make a more in-depth review about the 14-inch model for developers next week. Look, in my opinion, this MacBook is for creative people that work with 3D rendering, graphic design, video work, and maybe someone that needs multiple screens for their own workflow. Which is why for me personally, I found it so exciting once I realized that it was more than capable of handling my 420 codec I use for all my videos, even connected to an ultra-wide display. So if we were to compare this to a 2019 Intel-based 16-inch MacBook, you can see that the timeline is a lot smoother on the new M1 when playing 4K clips from the A7S Mark III at full resolution. Even exporting times were different on both devices, and note that the 2019 model with these specs was $2,000 more expensive. Plus, unlike my $5,000 PC, I did play a 422 4K clip at full resolution and it took it like a champ. Without a doubt, it is a creative laptop, and with a multi-core result of 12,256 in Cinebench, it can render complex scenes in a fair amount of time. Alright, one quick thing I want to show you guys while we're doing these Cinebench tests is listen to the fans on the M1 Pro compared to the last Intel 2019 version. Same test, same everything now. No sound. But hear this. This thing's just about to explode. Same test. Pretty freaking crazy. Quite different from the Intel-based 16-inch MacBook Pro. Even the Geekbench scores show an incredible difference between both of these devices. Regardless, the past few days I found myself loving Instant Wake, the fact that the HDMI port delivers practicality when you are in a rut, and admiring the reading and writing speeds of the SDXC slot when importing footage to Premiere or Lightroom, which I then find myself editing from the main SSD since its speeds were quite great. While using all of these apps and recording all of these tests, my peak average recorded temperature on the surface of the chassis was around 35 degrees, mainly while gaming on Fortnite, and the fans never truly made it past 35 decibels, which is insane. As someone that creates content for a living, it's easier for me to be able to justify a purchase like this. Some of my developer friends rather enjoy having the bigger screen, multiple display support, and the ability to write it off, but the 16-inch in particular is really for a specific set of people and I don't recommend it to most consumers. In fact, you're better off getting a 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro and building yourself a custom PC with the rest of the money. My advice to you is, if the power in this very laptop means that it can pay itself off, get it. If not, it means you don't need it. I hope this review allows you guys to make a better decision. A lot of people want to see a MacBook Pro 14-inch for developers video, and I will make sure to deliver that to you all. I will see you all next week. Take care.